audiences want to be moved. People want music to speak to them, to communicate to them. They don't want music to be all technically perfect and just blah, not say anything.
Charlie, hello.
Hi Petra, how are you?
I'm fine, and you?
I'm great. Thank you for meeting me at this time. And I know it's afternoon or evening where you are.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's not late at all. But
Oh,
I
good,
see the
good.
sun. I see the sun is shining at the back there in your. Is it your garden?
Oh yeah, yeah. So our backyard, it's a little bit of a rainy day, but the sun just came up not long ago. So it's
Oh,
what you might be seeing is a reflection of something.
oh, I see.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's one of those. It's been kind of cloudy and rainy all week, but
Oh, okay. Okay.
yeah, the winter time has come in Seattle.
Yeah, well, it's here as well. It's lovely autumn here and all the colors. But so you are in Seattle at the moment.
Yes, yes. I live here with my wife, very
Mhm.
just outside of Seattle, the suburbs.
Oh, okay. And
Yes,
were
yes.
you born there in Seattle?
I was born about an hour and a half away in a small town.
Okay. Mhm.
Very small town of like I think it had 14,000 people in it or has. And
Really?
then yeah, so I grew up
Ah,
in a small town. So it's close to home, but not exactly where I grew up. Yeah.
oh, okay. But now you coming from a very small town in America, how did you start in music?
Absolutely. I started when I was 3.5. I don't really remember it. So I have memories in my head, but I'm not sure if it's what I was told or if I am actually
Yeah.
remembering. But the story goes that so we had a little upright piano in our home. Like it was a garage sale piano. My parents literally bought it from a garage sale. So from someone's old, they're just trying to get rid of stuff. And it was a clunky piano. Like it had, the keys barely worked and it was like falling apart. And I guess my mom was cooking one day, and when I was 3.5, I climbed up on the piano bench and started pecking out "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star" by ear. And so she came out and asked me who taught me that, and I guess I said something like nobody or no one did or something. So she saw that I had a knack for music, and she started teaching me what little she knew for a few months. And then I went to several teachers. One of the ladies lived a block away in my neighborhood who taught the accordion and piano and organ. So I learned from her, and I learned from another lady who owned a piano and organ store. And so my dad would take me in, and she'd teach me things by ear. So everything from oldies songs to Great Balls of Fire, everything was entirely by ear. I couldn't read music. And that's kind of how I started. So as I grew older, I was taking from several different teachers and playing or and performing and stuff. And I was taking from a jazz teacher who said to my parents that Charlie needs to have a year of classical training to develop his technique and learn to read and all that stuff. So he introduced us to Nancy Adsit, who uh, was my teacher for about 12 years until I went to college. So the original plan was I was going to do it for a year and then go back to the fun song, so that I called
Oh,
it.
okay.
But it ended up being that I kept studying with her continuously, and she became like my grandma. Very like
Really?
family. Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely
But
family.
but now, so was the idea for you you wanted to just play jazz, or did you have an interest in classical music in the beginning?
Well, I didn't know much about it, I think. So I had only, my parents aren't musical at all. My mom's from Korea, and when she was younger, she learned a little bit of piano. My dad couldn't find middle C to practically save his life, and so like my family wasn't a musical one, and so I wasn't really exposed much to classical music. So I knew, I loved like Yanni and new age music and pop music and all that kind of thing. I think I just loved music. It wasn't any particular genre. And so when I met Mrs. Adsit and she was very strict and very, the technique and musicality and artistry. And she introduced me to a lot of classical music. She took me to concerts and took me and exposed me to all kinds of different things. It opened up a new world. And so I loved that, but it doesn't mean that I stopped playing the other stuff too. I still
I
do
know.
that even now for fun.
Oh, okay. So at what age then did you decide you want to do this professionally?
Oh my goodness. I don't think there was one age.
Oh,
It
okay.
was it was kind of this gradual. So when I was studying with Mrs. Adsit, I was doing more and more competitions and performing around and festivals and things like that. So I was exposed more to, more and more to music. And I knew that music was something that, I loved. But I also was, very much interested in other things. So I was interested in business, and I was interested in possibly going into medical school or something. I knew that I loved music, but I also had other interests, and I also was kind of realistic in the sense that like I knew that my family wasn't a wealthy one. I had to eventually figure out how to, pay my own rent and, live and buy food and all that stuff that, life's necessities. And so I thought, well, a lot of music is out of your control. It's not how many, the joke is, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. Well, there's another joke. It's how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Know the manager. And there's some truth to that, because a lot of it is stuff that's, out of your control. You can work hard and have talent and stuff, but there's a lot of people who are out there that, are far better musicians and artists and stuff than I am, that don't have the opportunities as I have to perform. And it's one of those things where you have to be realistic that, a lot of it's God's blessing, being at the right place at the right time, things like that. So I thought, well, if I couldn't do music, what would I want to do? And for me, I thought, medicine was always an interest. Business was an interest. My dad was ill, and he still is, most of my childhood. He has a rare neurological disease. It's called reflex sympathetic dystrophy. It's one of those random diseases that no one knows what causes it, and there's no cure. But it basically just causes intense, like, neurological burning pain through his body. So he was bedridden a lot of my childhood, and on heavy medications and stuff like that. So I think that might have been partly where I got an interest for medicine. But so as I was thinking about where to go to college, what should I pursue? These joint programs that were kind of coming up at the time were very interesting. So they in the U.S. they started having these programs between academic schools and music schools, and many of them are bachelor master's programs. So you can do a bachelor's degree in anything you want, and you can do a master's degree in music at a conservatory at the same time. So it's kind of a win-win.
Yeah.
So that was a very, really kind of interesting idea to me. And they were very new at the time. They just started a few years prior. So anyway, long story short, I did that. I did the one with Harvard and New England Conservatory. So I could study, I studied economics and did pre-medicine at Harvard, but I was still, doing my lessons weekly and things at conservatory and was performing more and more while I was in college too. So at the end of that, I had to really make a decision though, because eventually you have to still pick. So I realized at the end that, music was a passion and the other stuff were interests, and I wanted to follow my passion. So
this is so interesting that you say now about the medicine and the music, because just yesterday I spoke to a musician who did the same thing. He actually then decided he's going to study medicine rather than doing music. But isn't this amazing how connected these things are, and I always believe that it's so important that we realize that the sciences and the music and the math and everything, it's so connected.
Sure.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
but Charlie, your story is so interesting, and what you've done as a child, for example, all these competitions and so on. Do you think this is very important for musicians to do these competitions? And do you think this is something that gave you, or that developed a sort of a confidence in you to play?
That's a good question. I'm still not 100% sure how I feel about the competition thing. It's one of those things where it's almost like it's a necessary evil in a way. So when you're young and when you're a young student, you don't have the opportunities to perform. People aren't asking you to give concerts at places because there's so many young musicians who are playing, and some of them are good and some of them maybe not as much. And so a competition can be a good way for people to get exposure to some degree. at least when they're younger, high school age and younger. Of course, competitions go into adulthood too. Sometimes people do college competitions up through their early 30s. I think some of them go up to. And so in some ways it can give you exposure, but on the other hand, there's that joke that Bartok supposedly said that competitions are for racehorses. Just as you wouldn't, you wouldn't go to the Louvre and say, oh, this Monet is far better than the Picasso. You just wouldn't say that. They're different. It's art. It's not the Olympics where whoever's running faster wins. That's not what art is, right? And so I have on the one hand, competitions can provide wonderful exposure, and give students something to work toward. You can, oh, I have a competition in 6 months or whatever. I need to work for these pieces and make them, something to a goal. On the other hand, sometimes it seems that, I think competitions can sometimes maybe not result in choosing I don't think that there necessarily is a best when it comes to music. There's different. Just like if Horowitz would have been in a modern day competition today, he likely wouldn't win anything. Even though he's largely viewed as one of the most famous, one of the most great artists in history, if he had entered a modern competition today, he might not win anything. And I think part of the reason could be that how competitions are oftentimes judged. If someone rocks the boat, if someone really does something differently that's very artistically something else, the way that juries are is that maybe the extremes kind of get cut out, and you end up with something sometimes that might be more unoffensive to a larger group of people. For example, let's say if Horowitz came out and performed in a competition today, just as a hypothetical, maybe there's a bunch of jurors and some people say that is genius, absolute genius, 10, 10, 10, given, highest marks. But then other people might view it and they might say, that's not the way Beethoven should be played, or that's not the way that Rachmaninoff should be played. 1, 1, 1. So his average might be a 4 or 5. Whereas if someone else came and they played it socially acceptable way, and they didn't do anything extreme or anything very different, it's just kind of what people expect, they might get 7s across the board, and the person with the 7 might end up winning. Whereas
I see,
so it might there's a chance that kind of thing can happen. Not that it does always or very often, but it can. And so my view with competitions is kind of twofold. I think that they're
I also spoke to a young pianist, a student pianist once, and she said something also in that it's sort of, you have to then play, or people tend to play what juries want to hear, or what
that's kind of the same thing. Exactly. You're it's not what you necessarily would do as an artist or think that the music should be, but it might affect you to play in a way that you think might make the highest chance of winning. And that's
But now for young artists, for example, for young pianists now to get into the to get known, or to get concerts and so, what do you think is so important now for young, say, pianists, for example, for them to be or to do?
That's the question, isn't it? It's a difficult one. I think doing competitions is kind of, as we said, almost like a necessary evil. When you're young, it's good for exposure and it's good to get your goals there, but it's a good thing to do, to kind of have goals to work toward. You're learning this piece is for a reason. You're actually going to perform it, versus I'm learning a piece, I have no clue if I'll ever perform it in the future, that kind of a thing. It's much less inspiring to not know if you'll ever play something than if you know you will. I think that doing some competitions can be good when you're younger, because of that exposure and the ability to have those goals to work toward. But I think you have to always keep in mind that competitions aren't everything, and you can't take them too. You shouldn't take them too seriously. Like if you don't win the competition, it doesn't necessarily mean you're bad, but it can mean that the jury just was looking for something different. I have a neat story. One time I was at a competition. It was an international competition somewhere, and I made it to the semifinals. It was a long time ago, semifinals or something, right before the finals, and I was eliminated. So after you're eliminated, you can go talk to the jury and get feedback. So I had played the Chopin Opus 25 etudes, including the Winter Wind, the da 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 da. And I went up to one fellow, and he came up to me and he said, Charlie, you have to remember that the Winter Wind etude, it's not a military march. It should not be played like it's a military march. It needs to be less so. I said, okay. Less than 5 minutes later, I went to another member of the jury who heard the same performance and said to me, Charlie, it's a military march. You must play it like a military march. And it was at that moment that I was kind of like, you know what? I'm just going to do it how I want to do it, because no matter what you do, you're not going to please everyone. And I think if you try to please everyone, you risk not pleasing anyone, and that's kind of a risk. And maybe that's why that sometimes people with the greatest careers, performing careers, don't necessarily have, a slew of competitions that they've won. And sometimes the people who've won competitions end up not having the greatest of careers. And maybe that's because, audiences who don't really care, audiences want to be moved. People want music to speak to them, to communicate to them. They don't want music to be all technically perfect and just blah, not say anything. The point of music, I think, is to communicate and to connect with people and to move and touch people through your music. And I think audiences, even people who don't know, aren't experts in the field themselves, I think most people can tell what moves them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you are saying something so true, because when I spoke to a lot of artists over the lockdown period,
Yes.
many of them, we talked about the streaming, the live streamings, and the fact that there's no audience. And very frequently I heard them saying that the reason, when I asked, but what is it about this, about the live performance that you love so much? And then they say it's because of the imperfection of it, that it's never perfect. And that you can go to 2 or 3 times to the same concert and you will experience it differently, because it's live and because you cannot predict what's going to happen.
Absolutely.
And I think this is what you're saying now. That's what the audience want. That almost imperfection.
It's human.
Yeah,
it's a human thing. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not a. It's a human experience. Yes.
Yeah. But you seem to be very confident in yourself and what you're doing, and what I'm reading about you. You do so many things, and you do also. You also have you just your own person, your own type of artist, I would say. So. And you also do crossover. I say crossover. I mean, you play other genres as well. So you're not just a classical pianist.
One of the things I really love to do, and it kind of spurs off of what I did playing by ear when I was younger, is improvise. And so because when I was learning by ear, then it wasn't exact notes. It wasn't, this trill needs to go up and then down. It was you're improvising off of a tune and some harmonies that you're hearing someone play. And I also loved making my own pieces up, improvised on as well. So it's been a while now, but probably back in college, I started incorporating them into my tours. So when I was touring and giving concerts, I would start playing maybe a 10-minute long piece that's programmed into the first half of the concert or whatever, where I would improvise a piece. And a couple of my mentors that I had met who are in New York, they said to me one time, they said, Charlie, what you should do is, instead of just making up a piece when you're giving a concert, what you should do is ask 4 random people for random notes and use those random notes as a random melody and base your improvisation off of that. And hopefully it won't sound so random. And that way, they said, the people won't think that you're cheating and playing something that you already practiced ahead of time and are just saying is an improvisation. So I started doing that, and that has been tremendously fun for me, at least. And I think the audiences really like it, because it's something that was done in music all the time back in Mozart's day, Chopin's day, and now it's like never done almost. And so I've been doing that, and so sometimes cadenzas and sometimes just a short piece, but also I'm giving a concert in a week or so, and the entire second half I'll improvise a sonata based on people's notes. Yeah, so I'll do like 3 movements, but I'll just make one up based on notes that they give me. And I've done an entire program like that as well. And it's a lot of fun, because that's really music at its most raw. Then there's no editing, there's no practicing. It's pure music. Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
But now I'm not a musician, so you have to explain to me that now if you improvise, so you just have a few notes and you carry on and so you're basically composing on the spot.
Absolutely.
My
Yes.
goodness, this is amazing.
So it's been a lot of fun to do that, and so I've been doing it more and more with my classes. I'll play a few traditional classical pieces, Chopin, Bach, Beethoven, and I'll also do that, and it's tremendously fun because you never know what you're going to get, me included.
Yeah. And then can you remember what you've played afterwards?
Not exactly.
Oh,
No. So I record it because it's so spur. I like when I sit down to do one, I'll say, okay, I have, let's say it's a 10-minute long piece. And if I ask for notes, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. If I ask for notes, and they'll have those, I'll have the 4 notes in my head, and then I'll think, okay, what style of a piece, what feeling, what do I want to say with the piece? And the goal is to hopefully make it not sound like an improvisation. You don't want to just sit there just kind of rambling on for 10 minutes aimlessly.
yeah.
You want it to sound like it has a beginning and a middle and an end and a climax and a point, to hopefully make it sound like someone had spent years writing it, but obviously it's not.
Yeah. And then do you also play then say jazz pieces and so on the concert, or do you have specifically, this is the classical concert and this is what I play? Or
It really depends. So I've done a few tours through the Midwest of the U.S., so the middle part of the United States, which is more rural than a lot of the coasts in general, and I went through many small towns. And when I mean small towns, I mean some of the towns that I went through were and toured in were like 1,000 people, 2,000 people, and it was spectacular because I would get there, and out of 1,000 people, there might be 600 people at the concert. So it was, people just coming to enjoy music. And so what I perform kind of depends where I am. So if it's an audience that maybe isn't the most knowledgeable on classical music, you might perform a different program than if you're playing at Carnegie Hall proper or something like that. Oh. So when I did a lot of these tours through the Midwest, what I would do is I would incorporate a lot of classical and non-classical. So I would do a little bit of a few Chopin etudes, and then I would play some of my improvisations on Somewhere Over the Rainbow and other beautiful songs that are like more pop songs, and then kind of go back and forth. And for me, that was a blast because I love all the types of music. And granted, though, I still do play, a funny story. In 2019, so just before COVID, I got to play at Carnegie on the main stage. And I was playing this classical piece by Vivian Fine with the American Symphony Orchestra. And I was thinking, should I do an encore? And what encore I had been doing recently was Great Balls of Fire by Jerry Lee Lewis.
Oh, really?
And absolutely. And I was thinking, this is my first time at Carnegie Hall. They're never going to ask me back. This is inappropriate. Maybe I shouldn't do this. So I was standing backstage next to my dressing room, and there was this fellow there who was like he was the guy who was in charge of making sure I got to the stage when my time was to go on stage. So I was, I didn't want to just sit in my dressing room being nervous. So I was talking with him, and I was telling him about, I don't know if I should play an encore. I haven't asked, but I don't want to ask because they might say no if I ask. It's easier to get forgiveness than permission. So I said, what do you think? I was thinking of playing Great Balls of Fire. He goes, Charlie, I haven't worked here very long. Do it. And so it turns out that he had worked there a long time. He'd worked there for like 30 or 40 years and had seen every Isaac, he'd seen all the great artists ever go through, And anyway, I performed the concerto, and then I played Great Balls of Fire afterwards, and you had never seen so many screaming, people in that. It was great. So even in inappropriate places, I play fun songs too.
That's amazing that you had the courage to do that. Oh, I love that.
Oh man.
Yeah,
it was fun.
Oh, that's great. But this is wonderful because there should not be any limitation on what you can play.
Why not?
Yes. Yeah, it's music, and you should be able to play that. But yeah, but and that's very brave that you can do it, you know. But yeah.
Brave or stupid or both, I don't know.
I think it's brave. No, I always think it's wonderful if you have your own identity and if you have the courage to do it, and sometimes, you know, cross the boundaries a little bit. I think that's always good to do. But now, and do you also play music from living composers, you know, like newly composed pieces?
I do. It depends on where and when, but sometimes the opportunity to perform something. Uh, a recent one that I was going to play, unfortunately, that concert was canceled. No longer living, but I was going to play a piece that was very rarely played, and that was by Nadia Boulanger. We were going to play her concertante for piano and orchestra. Unfortunately, it was canceled because of COVID last year. Vivian Fine, the one that I was mentioning, was a it was the New York City debut of that. She's since passed away, but it was a beautiful concerto, a one movement concerto that we performed there. Um, that was spectacular, but it was another work that wasn't very well known, and I hadn't known it either until I was learning it for the concert.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Yeah. Because that's also interesting for me to hear about, because I've also spoken to many composers, and you know, you always think, how do their work get out and get known about? And it's the musicians that play the work, you know, that's so important as well.
Sure.
Yeah, and also for the audiences
Absolutely.
to get to know new music, and yeah, so. But now tell me, who is
Sure.
your favorite composer? What do you play? What do you enjoy playing most?
I so that's a difficult question for me, but I don't have one. It
Yeah.
kind of depends on which piece. I do tend to like the romantic style, so
Oh,
kind of from late Beethoven, like later Beethoven works through the romantic era. So I do love a lot of late Beethoven and Chopin. Those are
mhm.
two of my favorites. But it really depends on the piece. There's some pieces by
Oh,
Beethoven I don't care so much for, and there's some pieces,
oh,
and vice versa, So it kind of
yeah,
depends on the piece.
yeah.
Yes.
And has your taste, or no, not your taste, has your preference changed over the years? You know, like when you played when you were 20, and now that you are 29
Sure.
now.
Oh,
You are
oh,
20.
I never give out my age.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
older than I probably look and younger than I probably, what's the saying go? I don't know. But
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
uh I don't know if it has changed. The way I play pieces, certain pieces changes over time. So there's certain
Yeah.
pieces that I played for decades. Some pieces I
Mhm.
still play now that I played, many, many years ago. And I think the way I play them sometimes changes because,
Okay.
pieces they keep the way you view them kind of keeps changing over time. So even if you play
Yeah.
a piece one time, put it away. You don't play it for years and years and bring it back. The way you play it when you bring it back will probably be different than you played it, 5 or 10 years
Mm.
prior. So I think that has changed. My overall preference and style of music, though, I don't think it's changed too much. I think I liked romantic stuff back then too.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's great. Now, tell me on a lighter note, what do you do before a performance? How do you prepare on the day of the performance?
Oh
Do you have
boy.
some ritual?
I do kind of. So it depends on when the concert is, but assuming most concerts are at night in the evening,
Yeah,
and it
yeah.
also depends on if it's a concerto concert, if I'm playing with the orchestra, or if it's solo. But generally, I try to take a very long nap in the afternoon. So what I'll do is that the morning of, I'll go and if the piano is available, maybe I'll play the piano for 30 minutes or an hour early in the morning, 9 or 10 a.m., whenever it's open or available. Or sometimes there might be a rehearsal then with the orchestra, depending on which orchestra and their
Oh,
schedule.
yeah, yeah.
But I'll practice a little bit, not a whole lot, just to move my fingers. And then I'll go to Chipotle. Do you know Chipotle?
No.
Or Qdoba? They're basically American, like Mexican American food places that sell gigantic burritos.
Oh,
Like
okay.
I'm
Yeah.
talking like the burritos probably have 7,000 calories. I'm joking, but
Okay.
they're massive. So I'll go and buy like a burrito bowl at like when
Yeah.
they open, come back to my hotel, eat it all, and then sleep, go into a food coma for about 3 or 4 hours. So I'll sleep all afternoon, wake up at maybe 5, and then kind of slowly get ready, shower and dress and all that stuff, preparing for the concert, and then kind of get in the zone then. But my ritual often involves having a giant Qdoba burrito or Chipotle burrito, and then sleeping all afternoon.
Okay. And then, are you chatty when you're at the concert hall? Do you just then want to be on your own?
I'd rather talk with people before and during than be by myself. And I also try to get to the concert hall as late as possible. Like if I've literally, I've been to it. I've gotten there as late as like 2 minutes before I walk on the stage, and just basically just walk through the door and walk onto the stage. That's the best. There's no time to get nervous then. It's less so. But
But you probably get the whole house and the whole theater in panic.
Oh, they probably worried, yeah.
Where's Charlie?
That was a kind of an extreme example, but I usually try to get, because if you get there, an hour beforehand, you just sit in your dressing room twiddling your thumbs. There's, and then you just sit there waiting, and it just never comes. So I try to get there, 30 minutes, 15 minutes before. I usually, I do tell them that I am coming, so they don't worry.
Oh, okay.
But I do like also talking during the concerts as well. So like during the concert, I don't like to the audience. I think that I like concerts to not be me being like a monkey in a window where everyone's just coming and looking at, oh, look, he's playing, he walks on, bows, plays, bows, and walks off. I don't, that's not my style. So I really enjoy it so I'll walk out and talk between every piece. And I don't mean give a lecture. I don't like that either. I don't want to give the history of Beethoven on the stage and then play Beethoven. I don't care about that. I like just briefly, talking to the audience, this is a piece, I learned this back here, and this is what I really love about it. And, listen for this part, and let's give it a go. And then let's sit down and play. And it becomes much more of a, I think it kind of brings all the walls down. I think it makes the audience feel comfortable. It makes me feel comfortable. It's not me giving a concert to them. It's us all just sitting around and enjoying music and enjoying each other's company for an evening. That's kind of what it becomes. And I think that's a much better way to experience music.
Charlie, you really, this is amazing, because this is what I think always when I'm in a concert, is just that connection also. It's just that, what do we listen to? And, or sometimes for me, who's not a musician and I don't have the knowledge in music, but if somebody just gives me a little bit of a hint what to listen to or what to listen for, or what is a little story around the music, it just makes it so much different,
Even if it's an unrelated story, like, I heard this one time when I was did a competition a long time. I thought it was such a cool piece. I wanted to learn it. I think you'll like it. It just makes it more human, personal.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think people like stories. People like to know and like to know things. Where did it come from, or why is it here, and things like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's amazing that you do it. But and I wish really that more musicians would do that, and even I've spoken to a few conductors also who does this, just give a little bit of a connection for the audience.
I wrote an article several years ago now, and the title of the article I wrote was kind of on this topic, and the title was one of those kind of clickbaity titles. It was like classical, in quotes, classical music is dying, and that's the best thing for classical music, no quotes. So the point was that the classical rules, the kind of old-fashioned rules. You mustn't ever clap in between a movement. Oh no. Oh, you mustn't ever, if you all the rules, you can't talk, you can't do improvisation, you can't, these kind of things that became rules for no real reason. I think a lot of them are dumb, because it kind of raises all these walls for everyone, performers, the people who are in the audience, and it kind of like, I think it kind of prohibits people who otherwise might be interested in exploring the genre or exploring a concert hall or something, who's never, who's not experienced with it. They might be scared, so, sometimes people, they're afraid they're going to clap at the wrong time or do the wrong thing or whatever. And so they might not come. And I don't think that's the point of the music. You know, when Mozart was playing, the story goes like sometimes he'd play a piece, the audience would clap while he's playing in the middle of the piece, and then he might go around and play that part again a second time. Nowadays, that would be completely like, you know, you can't do that. You know, people get mad if they clap in between movements, let alone during a movement. Why not? Why not?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
exactly. And this is also one of the questions that I asked during my series in lockdown was that shouldn't we be more open, you know, shouldn't artists, and this is why I'm talking to artists, because, you know, we go to the concert halls and there is a little bit of a distance, you know, there is this distance between the artist and the public. And maybe if that distance can be narrowed or made smaller, then there will be more younger people coming, or, you know, like people like me who are not, I never know when to clap, so I just go with the guidance. But
Sure.
it is a matter that what you're saying, you know, it is sometimes intimidating
Exactly.
if you're not knowledgeable in that
And
sense.
the counter argument that can be made is that some people say, oh, well, you know, if you clap in between a movement, it cuts off the energy or something, or, you
Oh
know,
yeah,
like the intensity.
yeah.
And I'm not saying people should clap every time between every movement, but I think people should do what they feel compelled to do. If it's
Yeah.
if it's the end of a movement and they feel like they should clap, then by all means do it. And if they feel like they should, you know, just kind of like let it fade away, that's fine too. But I
Yeah.
don't think that there should be a hard and fast rule about, oh, when you can clap or when you can't clap or what, you
Yeah.
know. And, you know, if you can do improvisation or not, or if you can, you know, talk
Yeah.
to the audience in between pieces or not. I think it's, you know, a lot of those rules are kind of dumb.
But now, Charlie, you know, I have to ask you about what you dress up in. What is do you have a suit, or do you play in a suit, or are you very formal when you play?
So I've been lately, my kind of go-to is a white Mandarin collar modern tuxedo. So it's a tuxedo, but
Really?
it doesn't look like one. I wear, you know, it's tuxedo pants, but the top is a Mandarin collar black shirt with no
Yeah.
buttons, and then my suit is a white modern open hanging suit. So it's bright white.
Oh, really?
It's
Oh,
bright white.
wow.
Yeah. I used to wear a black version of the same suit, the same
Yeah.
tuxedo, and I thought, you know what? Why not? So I just wore a white one.
Yeah,
So that's what I've been
exactly.
doing.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
that's amazing. Yeah, but you are so your own person that I can totally it works for you perfectly. Yeah.
sure, sure.
And Charlie, what do you do in your downtime?
Hmm.
Do you have downtime because you're so busy and playing
I
and
do. So you know, like my wife and I, we'll watch movies at home, or we'll go. Lately, especially over COVID, what we did was we have those little electric bicycles, like small
yeah,
electric ones you get from Costco. So we take our little dog in a backpack, like a dog
yeah.
backpack, and you can put the dog in it, and then we ride bicycles. So we ride all around the neighborhood, or we go to a trails and ride them around. So that's been fun when the weather's nice. I like
Mm.
doing all kinds of stuff. A lot of house stuff. So I like working on the house and doing like projects, like making the house a smart house, doing the electrical, like changing the
Really?
outlets out. And
Yeah.
no, I'm always find some project to do.
Ah, okay. So you seem to be able to do many things.
It's fun. I'm not the type of person who enjoys um, I don't really enjoy talking about music itself. So some people get a kick out of discussing this movement of Beethoven or something. For me,
Oh,
I don't want to talk about like music or which
oh, I
or
see. Yeah.
I don't enjoy that. I love performing it. Um, but I don't like talking about music. I don't know. I've always been like that.
Oh,
So
really?
when I'm with friends and stuff, almost never talk about music. You know, we just, you know, talk about whatever. But um, yeah,
Yeah.
and not that I don't, I enjoy performing the music and everything, and I absolutely love it. Uh, but you know, I don't like talking about the intricacies of which direction a trill should go, or if this phrase should end here or here. I
Okay.
no, not those kinds of things don't interest me so much.
you cook?
I don't. Well, I'm a little bit. I'm great at the grill, so I can
Oh,
grill
okay.
stuff up
Uh-huh.
all pretty
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
I can make some good breakfast, but Stella's the good cook in the family.
Oh, is it? Okay.
She's
Yeah.
I lucked out in terms of she's got the good cooking ability. So as long as I eat anything, so it worked out well for me in
Oh,
terms
okay.
of.
Well, you Americans talk about a grill, and in England they talk about a barbecue, but in South Africa we say a braai.
A braai.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Have you heard of
No,
that?
I haven't heard braai. No barbecue, but
Yeah,
braai
but not a braai. Yeah.
thing,
So
right?
we on the grill. Yeah, but we
On the
call it
grill. Yeah,
but we call it a braai. Yeah. So.
braai. Very good. Oh, I'd love to visit South Africa sometime.
Oh, you should go. Yeah. I've been also talking to a lot of South African artists, and it's so interesting to hear all over the world what everybody is saying. Do you ever come to Vienna? Have
I
you come?
haven't been to Vienna yet. No, I
Okay.
really want to go. Haven't made it. I've performed a
Mm,
lot further west in Europe,
okay.
but not in Vienna. So I would love to
Oh,
go some.
Charlie, you have to come and do a concert
I
here.
want to.
Yes. But please let me know when you come.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, yeah. This is so lovely to talk to you, and your
Thank you
energy is
for.
amazing. I would so love to see one of your concerts or be at one of your
I hope
concerts.
so.
That would be so great. Yeah.
That would be. Thank you for taking the time to do this.
Okay, have a lovely afternoon.
You do too, and have a great weekend.
Thank you. You
All right.
too.
Bye
Bye.
bye.